This is an overview of the interface of Premiere Pro. This is an overview of the interface of Premiere. So on this side here of the screen, we have your source monitor. We have your source monitor. So, and here we have our program monitor. So initially we talked about Premiere Pro. One of the advantages we mentioned now about Premiere Pro was how Premiere Pro has two monitors. We talked about how Premiere Pro has two monitors. So from here you can see that Premiere Pro has a source monitor and also a program monitor. And both of them in this case now they are different, have different playheads, and you use them differently, so to say. They have their functionalities, but the source monitor is actually for convenience. It's actually for convenience. So you do not have to start you don't have to start doing all your work on the second monitor, which is the program monitor. You don't have to start viewing everything on the program monitor. If, for instance, I am working with a 30 minutes long footage, if I'm working with a 30 minutes long footage and I drag that 30-minute long footage into my timeline, and by the way, my timeline, you can actually see the arrow that points to timeline over there, and you can see the what they call the line. You have the timeline there, and from the timeline, let's assume I drag a clip, a 30 minutes clip, down to my timeline. And by the way, this interface that you're looking at here, for those of you who are going to be using Premiere Rush, the interface from Premiere Rush, which is the mobile version of your Premiere Pro, isn't so different. As I mentioned before, it shares basically similar features. It shares basically similar features. The only difference in that sense is actually going to be the capability. But as I was saying before, as I was saying initially, rather, uh, if I'm to work with a 30-minute video or 30-minute clip, now I don't necessarily need all the entire clips on I don't need the entire the 30 minutes long video. Let's assume I need some pieces of it. I don't need everything, I just need some pieces of it. Now, for me to work with that, I don't have to drag the entire 30 minutes video into my main monitor. My main monitor, in the sense, is into my timeline, because whatever you drag into your timeline, which is this area here. I don't know if you guys can see the clips there. I'm sorry. Let me just leave this my presenting. Uh, Let me leave my presenting so that you guys can see what I'm showing you from my mouse. Just give me a sec, guys, please. Okay. So hopefully you guys can see my mouse move. Okay. So now this is my timeline here. My mouse is resting on my clips. Now whatever is on that side of the timeline is what shows up on the main monitor, on the program monitor. Whatever shows up there is what shows up on the main monitor. So what happens here with my source monitor is I could watch the video, or I could watch the clip, the 30 minutes clip, on my source monitor, and then find a way to cut out the particular area of that video that I want on the source monitor and drag it into my main monitor. And then I can do that clip by clip. So in other words, the source monitor would actually serve to me like a filter. The source monitor would actually serve to me like a filter. So the source monitor contains all my rubbish. The source monitor contains all my rubbish. I just see everything there. Everything is just there. The entire 30 minutes is there. But I could just, from my source monitor, I drag in the exact clips I want. I just cut out exactly what I want and then bring it to be viewed on my main monitor. Now, also on this timeline, I have uh, I have my project panels. That's where I actually bring in all my resources, my media files, my audios, my videos, and all of that. I also have my two panels. I have my track. I have my audio master. I have my audio mixer. Okay, the audio mixer in this view here is missing, but yeah, if you go to our audio workspace, it's actually more evidence. It's actually more evidence there. We've actually said a lot about sequence initially, and I think I used the Microsoft Word as an example of how sequence could mean like a new page or a new canvas to work with, but within the same project, basically. Okay, go. Let's go ahead. Say there are different functions of a sequence in Adobe Premiere Pro. Basically, a sequence is an individual video timeline. Typically, this means a single video is edited on a single sequence. Now, each sequence has a specific image size and number of frames per second or frame rate. You can create as many sequences as you like in a project, but you will usually work with just one master sequence to create your video. So, as I explained earlier, the sequences that you create are actually different, and unlike our Microsoft Word, really, because Microsoft Word, when you're creating a new page, you do not change the dimension or you not change the color of the background. It doesn't work that way in Microsoft Word. But if any of you have worked with Photoshop, I don't know how many of you have worked with any design tool or design software, so that would have been a very good way of explaining or relating this. However, working with a sequence here is each sequence you create, more like each new page for editing your video you create, you can actually make changes. So if, for instance, my first sequence has a dimension of, let's say, 1080 by 1080, if it has a dimension of 1080 by 1080, or end with a frame rate of, let's say, 25 frame rate, the 25 frame rate per seconds or so. If, for instance, we have that, and we want to create a new sequence, we'll have a different sequence with a different dimension of, let's say, this time 1080 by 920, with a frame rate of perhaps 30 frame rates per seconds this time. So you find out that the specifics or the features of both frame rates, or sorry, the features of both sequences can be different. The features can be different. You can have a sequence one to have a totally different look from sequence two. In other words, you can make sequence one to have the dimension of your phone. That's your phone screen. You can have a sequence one to have the dimension of your phone screen, and you can have sequence two to have dimension of your television, and you can have sequence three to have maybe the dimension of your laptop, and so on and so forth. Well, I think what I'm basically trying to establish here from what we are looking at here is that your sequences could actually have different features, not necessarily the same thing. Even though it wouldn't make sense if you have all these sequences and then you render all the sequences as separate videos. No, it doesn't make any sense. If your sequences are having different dimensions or different, your sequences are having different features, it must be towards a purpose. It must be towards, you must have a plan for why you want them to be that way, because at the end of the day, these sequences are actually going to end up in one master sequence that is going to basically collate all the sequences that you have created. So imagine me watching a movie, and in one side part of the movie, it's like I am watching from from a TV, which is dimension of 1920 1080, and then all of a sudden it changes, and then all of a sudden the movie dimension now changes, and it's as though I'm watching from phone. That doesn't make any sense. So if you are doing that, it means that okay, you're trying to be creative by giving it different dimensions or giving it different features and all of that. So you have to be very intentional about what you do and how you're being creative. But the main purpose here is that you understand that sequences are created. You can create as many sequences as you want. Sequences can differ, and also you should have a master sequence. So transition in Adobe Premiere Pro. Now uh, we have multiple or several transitions in Premiere Pro. These are not transitions that you have to download. Although you can download, you can decide to download them if you want. You can decide to download the transitions if you want. So now transition effects blend the content between two sequence clips over time to smooth out and edit or add visual interest. So, from the first class we had, I think we started off. Yeah, I don't know how many of you here were actually in the first class that we had. We actually started off with how two clips, when we have, let's say, we are supposed to edit a video that involves um, two or three in the individuals. And in the first clip, one is introducing himself. The second one, my name is John, my name is Sarah, my name is Sandra. Now, if I have all three clips on one timeline, on one space, it will be jumping by the time I'm playing it. It will go, my name is John, jumps to Sandra, jumps to Sarah, and so on. But it jumps. You find out that like your eye actually just sees this instant change from one person to another. It just sees this instant change from one person to another. So, but transition here in Premiere Pro actually creates this this smooth move, basically, or an interesting move from one person to another. There are different types of transition. You could have it to fade out, or maybe you could have a shape slide in front of them before it moves to the next person. Or there's this one particular favorite of mine, which is the light leak. You just have a light effect comes on top of the screen before it moves over to the next person, so you don't experience that jump. So basically, what the transition actually helps us with is it eliminates the jump from just one person and then all of a sudden you are seeing the next person. So transition effects use the unused part at at the start or end of a clip called handles to overlap the content for the duration of the effect. This will be actually clearer for you when you start working on the platform. You will understand what we're actually saying, what we are speaking about here theoretically. You will actually understand it when we start working on the system, on the application itself. A transition is the way one shot changes to the next, yes, to the next clip. By default, if two clips are placed next to each other in the timeline, this transition is a cut. Say to make more interesting transitions such as dissolve, wipe, and effect, use the transition available in effects windows with the effects window. Now, before I move any further, right, I would like a little engagement by you guys, right? Because I think my mouse is moving really, really fast, and that's actually crazy. Okay, my mouse is moving really, really fast and stuff. So, have any of you out here used an editing software before, or do you understand visually? I mean, like, have you seen? Do you have a visual understanding of what transition means? Not by what I'm saying, but have you seen like transition happen in the video before? Do you understand it visually? That's a transition.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Uh, can you explain it in your own words?
Yeah, I,
What did you say?
moving from one clip to another, moving from one scene to another,
Okay, good.
and then probably style. Moving from one scene to another, then probably you want to put a style in the way it moves in or moves out, or you want to add an effect or something.
Exactly. Exactly. So, okay, it's cool that a couple of you, I'm very very sure a couple of you here already have an idea or you know what this stuff looks like, right? And I think that okay, what actually comes next is your creativity with transition. What actually will come next is your creativity with transition. Once you understand okay how it looks like, because I think there was this time when a friend of mine was actually editing a video and then he had transitions over on every cut. He had transitions over on every cut, and that was weird. Like you have to be sure, you have to know exactly where you put transitions. For instance, I particularly when I'm working with transitions, I try as much as possible not to put it everywhere because in that case it will be disturbing. It will be disturbing if I have it everywhere. If I put it on every cut, maybe this person is jumping to this person, I just put a transition there. This person is jumping to this person, I just put a transition there. It's actually going to be very, very red and all of that. So if you go through some videos, interview videos and so on, you'll find out that most of those videos you don't really use transitions. Do you guys agree with me? If you're going through an interview, for instance, you watch interviews on TV, CNN, Arise TV, you find out that when the camera is actually transitioning from one speaker to the next, there is no special effects. There's no special effect transitions. Do you guys agree with me?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. All right, cool. It's interesting that you actually say sometimes. Okay. All right. Now, in most cases, actually, the camera is actually allowed to jump from one person to the other. But here is a special way of how I personally use my transition. I use transition to actually visually let the viewers know that I am moving from one segment of an interview or one segment of a show to another. That's what I do. I'm trying to like, okay, this particular segment. For instance, if I'm asking a question, I think I explained this in the first class, right? If I'm doing an interview or if I have a video set where the first clip I have or the first segment of it is introduction. The first interviewer says the first person being interviewed said, "Oh, my name is Caleb," and then the next one, "My name is Edidiong," "My name is Bolanle," and they finish introducing himself. No transitions when I'm moving from Bolanle to Caleb to Edidiong to Shefflon. No transition. But by the time they now start talking about what they do, now I'm Caleb, I'm a video editor, I work in a Hiswa hub, so on and so forth. And then the next person say, "Well, I'm Bolanle, I work in Microsoft, I'm a what do you call it, a copywriter, a Kiniko. Then I put my transition. I put my transition intentionally for you to know that okay, this is what it means. I don't just put it on every cut to say okay, because there's a jump between here to here, I put it there. And the same thing you will find in your television shows. You find out that when they are doing the interview, there isn't a transition. But when they are trying to move from another segment of that interview to something like they are trying to move to a different segment, then they put the transition. And then the transition makes the viewers know that okay, this segment of questioning has ended. We are moving to a different segment. Although this is not written in stone, it's not a must that everybody must follow this method or so. It is basically how I have observed, and it's basically how I work, how I choose to work. And I feel like having too many transitions in some cases could be noisy and it could be disturbing. It is clear that too much of everything is actually bad. So we don't really, I think we can just take that as a general rule of thumb.